Let's talk about writing a story. Hi everyone. Today we are going to look at how to write a basic story. I guess it's fair to say straight up, this is how I write stories. There are lots of different ways people write stories. It really comes down to what works best for you. However, I'm going to show you today what works best for me and see whether or not there's any parts of it that work for you. So I want to explain how to write a story, but I don't want to write a feature-length film. That is just over the top for what we're trying to do here. We want to just carry story structure, taking a message and turning it into pages. Now, you can take this idea and apply it to pages in a storybook, pages in a novel, pages in a short film. It's the same principle no matter which medium it ends up being in. So, let's get into it. First of all, every good story needs a message. It doesn't matter what the story is, your message needs to be something that the reader or viewer is going to take away from it and be enriched with. So today I'm going to come up with a message that's going to be suitable for a children's storybook. And that message today is about learning to overcome your fears. I'm going to say our character's name is Billy, and Billy needs to learn to be brave. See what I did there? So every story generally has at least 3 acts or 5 acts. But 3-act structure works on the following 3 parts. You have the inciting incident, you have the crisis, and you have the resolution. So let's start with the inciting incident for a second. We're just going to come out with 1 line of text to describe what's going to happen in that part. The inciting incident, however, as an overview, is where we find out about the current existence of our character, the life that they're leading. Something has to happen though, which is the incident, that thrusts them into a life that they're not expecting. And by the end of the inciting incident in Act 1, we find ourselves in the crisis. In the crisis, our character reaches the hardest point of the story by the midpoint. But at the same time, by the midpoint, they are also coming to the height of their learning. They're reaching a point that's going to be their turning point. Then, of course, you have Act 3, which is the resolution, where everything comes to a conclusion. However, our character has gone through several changes. They're not the same character they were in Act 1. They've learnt or carry some sort of change to their character. From the message comes the resolution. Let's take our message and turn it into a line for each act. Act 1. Billy was afraid of the dark. Act 2. Billy is thrust into the dark and hates it. Act 3, Billy is no longer afraid of the dark. Now look, you can go from these 3 points and create a 3-page storybook if you really want. But there's just not quite enough meat on the bones yet, in my opinion. We now need to flesh out each of these 3 points. Now this is where it gets interesting. Every act of a story has another 3 acts within it. A bit like fractals in maths. Let's build out Act 1 into another set of incident, crises, and resolution. So I'm going to say for the incident, Billy is going to bed and his mum switches off the light. Now, of course, Billy is afraid of the dark, so Billy asks for the light to stay on. Billy's mum, however, says there are no monsters to be afraid of and that he needs to learn to be brave. See how we've stated the message. Then, of course, we have the crises. The light is switched off and Billy is thrust into the dark. Billy hates this situation and imagines all sorts of horrible things when looking at the shadows around the room. Billy hears a small voice and jumps in fright. And of course, the resolution of our inciting incident is when he realizes that this small voice is actually Billy's toy bear, saying it's okay, and he explains that the sword of bravery is what he needs. And Teddy promises to show Billy a secret door behind the bookcase to lead him to this sword. That brings us to the end of the inciting incident. We started with an incident, we had a crisis, and we have a resolution. It's a bit like going over a small hump towards a bigger hump. This leads us into Act 2. And you guessed it, we also now need an incident, crisis, and resolution here too. So let's flesh it out. Billy steps through the doorway with Teddy and finds himself in a forest. Billy is very scared He doesn't know what lives in the forest, and it's still quite dark too. Perhaps Billy brought a torch with him, and he's using that as a bit of a side comfort, despite the fact that Teddy is trying to teach him to be brave. Teddy explains that the sword of bravery isn't too far away and promises he knows where to go. Crises. Walking down a path, Billy and Teddy are suddenly beset upon by a scary monster, and when he gets scared, he drops his torch. Here we have our crises, because the torch hits the ground and stops working. Maybe the batteries fall out or the globe breaks. Now this monster looks a lot like the shadows on the wall, which is a bit of a callback to Act 1. Teddy grabs Billy by the hand and leads him quickly away, running from the monster. More monsters start to follow behind this first monster, like a building of Billy's fears. Teddy opens a door on the side of a tree, revealing a room inside with a sword sitting on a stand. The sword glows very dimly, doesn't exactly look like what Billy expected. Billy races inside and grabs the sword, and as soon as his hands touch the handle, it shines brighter and fills the room with light, and the light casts itself out even through the front door of the tree onto the forest floor. Of course, we now have to have a crisis in our resolution, and that is that the monster finds itself at the door to the tree. He's trapped. So Teddy reminds Billy that he must be brave. Once again, we're restating the message to the reader. So Billy suddenly turns and puts on a brave pose, and in a moment thrusts the sword up into the air, holding it high. The light casts into the eyes of the monster. With the light casting onto it, we can finally see what this monster is. Turns out the monster is a fluffy little bunny covered in smelly old socks. Again, a reference back to the shadows that Billy saw on the walls in his room. And we get some idea that perhaps this monster is not really a monster at all. The bunny gets such a shock from seeing the light that the socks all fall to the ground. The monster is defeated. We move into Act 3, the resolution, where Billy is no longer afraid of the dark. Our incident is that Billy and Teddy return to Billy's room, victorious, walking tall. All of a sudden, Billy realizes he now feels tired. Teddy explains that it's time he went to sleep, congratulating him on finding his bravery as he tucks him in. Teddy gives one last piece of advice to Billy about remembering his bravery for next time Billy falls asleep. The next day, Billy wakes up. This is the start of our crisis. He asks himself, was it all a dream? He picks up Teddy and tries to talk to him, but Teddy doesn't respond. Billy's a little sad, but he remembers Teddy's advice like it was yesterday. Did he really imagine the whole thing? That next night, Billy's mum asks him if she can turn off the light. Billy looks at Teddy, and Billy agrees, much to his mum's surprise, who comments that he's found his bravery. The lights go off, and Billy again wonders as he falls asleep, was it all a dream? With Teddy tucked in next to him, he closes his eyes, and we see in the background a slight glow from the bookcase in the corner of the room, with a small visible piece of the handle showing from behind. Now you can see here, we've constructed a complete story. And no kidding, I came up with this in one sitting just from going through this method, which I've just shown you. Now, each one of these points can be a page in itself. I would say for a children's book, if we look at this level here, where we have 3 sets of incident, crises, and resolution, that gives us 9 pages. And we can explain 3 points per page. And we will give the reader plenty to read and plenty for the illustrator to draw in that fact too. If we were doing this as a short film, there would be ample to explain and to show and to demonstrate as well. It would actually make quite a decent little short, and perhaps one day that's exactly what I'll do with this. However, as you can see, just following this simple structure, we've created a story where we have Billy being afraid of the dark, being thrust into the dark, and then coming out of it no longer afraid of the dark. Our character has done a full character arc, as they call it. They have gone into the situation, faced crises, and come out changed. So I hope this has been interesting, and I hope this has been inspiring to you. Whether you're looking to learn this to write stories for children, whether you're looking to write stories for adults, whether you're looking to make films, this same structure will work for any of these situations. If you're looking for a tool that can help you to write in this way, I highly recommend using FreeMind. It's, as the name implies, a totally free tool. And as you can see here on screen, this is me using the app right now. And this is how I actually wrote this content myself. So I hope you found this interesting. Have you written anything as a result of watching this video? If you have, I'd love to read it. Thank you for watching, everyone. Please remember to like and subscribe, especially if you found this useful. And I'll see you next week.